This is how to use the hand plane and how to get the first steps on your pencil holder project. Now the instructions, if you notice I'm standing by the blue cabinets here, the instructions are up here on the wall. They're just kind of stapled onto a board that's on the wall here, and you want to follow through along the steps. Make sure you read everything, read what's written on there, and look at the pictures and really think about it. You're going to need a hand plane, and you're going to need a board that I provide for you. Now, where are you going to get that board? Follow me, I'll show you. Walk to the back of the class. Sitting here on this rolling cart, there should be enough boards for all the classes. Pick one. I'm going to pick one that's difficult. You can choose one. If it has a knot in it, that can add character. Let's take one, but it does make it often a little bit more difficult to work. I'll take one with a knot in it, because this one might just pop right out. But this is where you find the wood. Let's head back to the cabinet. Now you'll notice that my hand plane is lying on its side like this. This is really important. I want you guys to always put your hand planes on the side. If you have your own shop someday, and you know there's no nails or any glue on the surface, you can set them like this. It won't hurt it. But in this shop, we have multiple classrooms, multiple classes, and we have glue sometimes on here, and sometimes there's nails hiding in the surface. And here's a screw right here. And if you put this down on the workbench like this, and it hits a screw or a nail, you're going to dull your blade, and it'll be frustrating to use. So you start out by putting it in the vise. You should have learned that already when we did the cutting. Lock it in. Make sure there's a space here. You want to have it raised off the vise. If it's down like this, what you call flush, where it's lined up, that's not going to be good, because you will slide your hand plane, and it's going to hit these bits of metal around. You want to raise it, make sure it's up, okay, like that. Now you're ready to hand plane. Now there's another video that shows you how to adjust the hand planes, and your teacher or the sub will be able to help you with that when you watch the video. All right, but basically you're going to smooth this. This is rough, came straight out of the sawmill. You can still see the lines from the sawmill, the saw. So what I'm going to do is just start sliding it across. And it doesn't seem like much is happening, but it is cutting. It's taking off the high spots. So the goal here is to make this nice and smooth. I'm starting on the face. So I start from one side, and I go down, and then I move over, and I keep moving over until I get to the end of the board, and I start again. If you follow that pattern, you'll have good success. I can already see it's getting smooth here. So I'm right-handed. I'm right-handed, so I'm starting on the right side. If you're left-handed, you'd start on the left side like this and work your way towards the right. So I'm going to keep going, and it's just not taking very long. It's already smooth almost. A couple of other marks there I'm going to get rid of. That should do it for that side. Now be careful setting it on its side. Now also, to clear the shavings, don't bang it, because that will knock the blade out of alignment. You want to clear it with your fingers carefully. Okay, I'm going to do the other face now. Oops. Oops. Clear the shavings with my hand. Following that pattern, down one side, moving over. Getting it almost there. Done. I got that side. Time to do the edges. Now, got that side. Do the other edge. You'll notice that this didn't take me very long. It's because I've been doing this for a long time. It will probably take you a lot longer to get a good result. You can usually get it without any lines and nice and smooth like this. One thing you will want to check before moving on is that the edge is square to the face. So get a square from the cabinet, make sure you hold it against the face, slide it down, and look for gaps right underneath here. If there's big gaps, then you might want to try to change the angle of your plane to get that lined up. If it's pretty good, like this is square there, that's what you call square, I would move on to the next step on there, which is sawing and measuring. which you guys have already learned. Watch this video again to learn how to do the little tricks to using the hand plane. Always setting it on its side. Watch the one about adjusting them properly, and you should be in good shape. Thanks for watching. Alright, we're going to do a video here on the next step on the pencil holder. That'll be the steps after you've done the planing. So after the first row on the instructions, which are right here, and it shows that we need to measure from each end 6 inches. And I've noticed that my board here is a little bit rough still, so I'm going to plane that up so you can see that. So I have a hand plane ready. And then just smooth over. Perfect. Now, what you'll notice is that we have a smooth edge here and 2 smooth faces. I also have this knot here, and I could use that as part of my design, but I might choose to cut it off as well later on. I also have a little chip here that I may want to get rid of later, so I'll show you how to do that. But we're going to do the next step where we measure and cut this to be 2 pieces 6 inches long. One thing to keep in mind, you want to make sure you have a nice sharp pencil when you're doing any of this work. Okay, so here we go. We're at the point we're going to measure this out. Measuring 6 inches from one side, make a little mark. 6 inches from the other side, making a mark. Now is where we use the square. Now this is a combination square. We also have tri-squares here, and they're essentially the same thing. This has the added functionality of being able to slide the body around. The way you use a square is the body has got to be pressed against the edge of the board in order to get an accurate reading. The whole purpose of a square is to enable you to reference 90 degrees. So as you put the square on the edge, you are able to establish a perpendicular or 90 degree line here. So we're going to do that. Hold the square against the edge, draw a line. If you're just holding it out like this and the body is not touching the edge, you're not using the square. You may end up with a crooked line. Ensure that that square is tight against. There are my lines. And now I'm going to cut this. Let's see, I'll just go right there. Grab myself a saw. As I'm cutting, I'm listening. I can hear I'm getting close to the end of my cut, so I'm going to slow down, press a little bit gentle, make that one split without even pushing it very hard. You want to go carefully so you don't get a chip out like this. The wood grain was exiting in this direction, so it chipped a little sooner than I was expecting. That's normal. And I'm going to cut this one. Now if you look closely, you might be able to see I'm cutting just a little bit away from my line. That's what I want to do. You'll notice I changed to cutting upwards here. You can do that if you want. Basically what that does is helps eliminate the tear out, what's called where the wood grain chips out. Alright, that's cutting it. And I'll show you how to clean all this up. Next one. Actually, there's one more step. No, we're going to do this first. Okay, we've got our 2 blocks and we're ready to move on to the next step. Now you may have a very rough cut here, and some of you might not have a nice straight line like this where you're just off the line. This is perfect. You want to be just off the line. Yours might be crooked if you're the first time cutting, and you might get a little frustrated wondering why that happened. It has to do with just how you're holding the saw, and it'll come with experience and time to get that cut where you want it. As you tweak the saw, the angle, it changes where it cuts. It'll go where you tell it to, so if you tweak it and twist it just slightly, it'll change its direction. If you're halfway through the cut, you may have to back out and try and establish a new cut line. What I'm going to do is show you how to clean this up here now. Well, I've got this little chip. I'm going to start by cutting that off. So I'm going to get a little closer here so you can see, and let's just put this in here. And I'm just going to cut that off. Simple. Now, to clean up the end grain, this is the end grain here, and that's end grain because the tree is growing this direction. You can imagine like fingers or straws going up and down the tree this way, and they split easily this way. They open up like your fingers open up easily, but they're strong across like this. So when we were planing before, we were planing this direction on the face and the edge, and it was planing just fine. If we go to plane the end grain, we're going to have a problem. And there's ways of planing end grain, but I want to demonstrate what happens if you don't. Take precautions. You'll notice that as I'm planing here, you can hear it slapping. What's happening is it's tearing out. You can see the wood grains going this direction. The plane catches and rips and tears that and causes it to chip out. It's called tear out. And we're going to have to eliminate this from happening. There are ways of doing it. For now, what I'm going to do is just maybe reestablish that edge, plane it down so I'm clean of that, because I want to have a nice clean edge. I'm going to put a slight angle on here so it doesn't take long. There, I think I'm actually already past. There's a little bit left. There, pretty close to my line. So I want to clean up the end here, and it kind of worked a bit, but it chipped out. So there's a few ways of eliminating that from happening. One way is to put a slight angle on here so that it doesn't chip out, and I'm going to try that. So I'm going to, hopefully you can see this, mount in here like this. Then I'm just going to put a chamfer on there. So you can see carefully, I've got a little bit of an angle just on the edge, and what that's going to do is help support the grain on the end. Now as I plane here, reducing the cut also will help. There's enough support here because it has a little chamfer. The other thing you can do is put a block of wood behind here to help support it. So what I'm going to do is the next step. So this is one way to deal with the end grain tearing out, is to put a chamfer. Another way is to put a supporting block behind so that the fibers on your finished piece don't tear out. Only on the scrap of wood you put behind do that. For the pencil holder, we actually end up with a piece like that. So what I'm going to do is do the next step where I actually make a 3-inch wide piece. Now it's good to measure 3 inches and 3 inches. So you end up with a 3-inch block. What we do then is mount it vertically, just like the instructions, and cut down. Now this is not the ideal saw for that. I'm going to do a bigger saw. One of these bigger carpenter saws, and we're going to cut that. This piece, which is the scrap, is going to start these fibers of wood. So you can see I'm making a cut down here to change the width to be 3 inches wide. Now save this little piece. I'm going to use that in a minute. I just made a rough cut here. I'm going to clean that up. Okay, now we're going to use this block that I cut to support the end grain as another way of doing end grain planing it. So if I clamp this in the vise like this, as I plane across, this piece, which is the scrap, is going to support these fibers of wood. It's not going to break. Now keep in mind, this is for when you're planing end grain. End grain is here. You can see the growth rings here. The tree was growing in this direction, and the end is here. The unsupported fingers are there, and they split easily this direction. This way it planes nicely, this way not so much. It planes fine so long as you're doing the right thing. So here we go. Here you can see again it's starting to split out right there. That's because that's my scrap, but on my good piece it's supported. There we go, nicely planed. Now, I'm not quite to my line and I'm at a bit of an angle, so I want to clean that up. So, getting close. We can check it with a square, holding it against here to check. I'm a little bit off. A little bit off, so I'm going to still adjust it. It doesn't need much. The other thing that's happening is this piece of wood has the wood grain exiting up the top. So as you're going against it, it's like petting a cat. From its tail to its head, it just catches all the little hairs. If you turn around and go the other way, it'll be smooth. Maybe you can see it, maybe not. The wood grain is going like this here. So as I plane this direction, it's catching all those little fibers. If I turn around and plane that direction, it'll be smooth. I'm taking a pretty heavy cut there too. So there, that's good. It's nice and smooth. Check it, nice and square. And my ends are nice and smooth from planing. Now another option is sanding. You can always use sandpaper, but sandpaper takes a lot longer than using a hand plane. Wrap the sandpaper around a little block, and then you can sand the end. You can also take the time to sand the corners a little bit, get them nice and soften the edges a little bit to make them look a little bit nicer. Doesn't take that long. Alright. This narrow piece is the one you're going to put your pencil holes in. Okay, that's pretty good. We'll be able to sand that out or plane it later, the pencil marks. That looks pretty good. This one I'm going to clean up now. Doing the same method, I'm going to clamp this piece behind so that it's supported and plane this direction. Alright, I'll do that and then we'll be ready for drilling. Okay, over here we have the drill press over here beside the drills and stuff. Before you use this, you will have needed to see a demonstration, and you need to copy down these safety points on a piece of paper. Put your name on it and the date. Alright. On a drill press, what we have, especially this one that's set up now for drilling the holes in the pencil holder, we've got a cam clamp right here and a jig. A jig is a tool used to help repetitive functions, so drilling lots of holes in the same place. We can set up a jig. And what this does is it will allow us to adjust the size for different thicknesses. And we can clamp the material in there and it holds it in the right spot, and when we drill the hole it'll end up in the same position along here. So the way it works is you have a switch here to turn on, and that begins to spin the drill. You lower the handle in order to engage the bit with the material. So I'm going to do a nice layout on here to know exactly where I need to drill the holes, and then we're going to drill them. Okay, I'm set up here more or less to drill my holes, and I've got my marks you saw in the other video, and I've got to set this up for the right depth. This is a cam clamp, and it works by just being set at the right depth, and it just pops over like this. If you have it set too far back and this plunger is too far away, then it's not going to hold the material. If you have it set too far out, it's not going to click over nicely. So you've got to adjust it for your own piece so that it pops over nicely like that. The other thing you want to watch for here is that you have it centered in this direction. Now to do that, you kind of have to, with this setup, you have to manipulate the bottom piece that's clamped on. And you can get my help with that, or you can give it a try. What you have to do is loosen this clamp and then pivot this until you get it centered. You may have to lower this down until the point of that bit right here is on your center line, and you're going to reclamp this. Alright, I'm going to remove this, tell them right where I want to be, double check that it is stopping where I want it to, right here. Up here, can you see that? No. Right up here you have a depth stop on the drill press. You can see it moving up and down. When that hits right here, that means that you're at the bottom of the hole and it won't drill anymore. So you can set that up by spinning this up and down. Alright, I'm going to drill this hole. That's one hole done. I'm going to do the rest of them and then we'll move on. Okay, you'll notice the next step talks about having a funnel shaped piece of sandpaper and sanding the holes, and sometimes that gets confusing. All that means is you make a funnel with a piece of sandpaper, and now to do that can get a little tricky. It's actually quite simple. Choose one edge, so this edge I'm going to choose, and you fold it in towards itself. Once it's together, then you can pinch it with your thumb and you make a funnel shape. Stick that in the hole, spin it around, and you sand those corners nice and clean. Okay, now we're ready to come up with a design to put on here to wood burn. Alright. Okay, here we are at the wood burner. This is along the wall where the drill presses are. So to orient yourself, you can see the rest of the shop there. And this is just the long workbench. I've got 3 wood burners along here. There's also one right back here, I believe. And there are other ones. Ask me if you can't find them, okay? So wood burning is just what it sounds like. You've got a pen here. This is a wood burner. And there's a switch here for turning on. That sends power to the pen. You've got a little dial here to set the temperature. You want to leave it about 9, maybe up to 10. The thing to remember, this little tip gets hot, it'll burn wood, so it will also burn your skin and your hair and your shoes and someone else's hair and skin and shoes, so be careful not to touch that end or you will burn yourself. Now, it's a good idea to find a scrap of wood and practice a little bit first. So you just touch it down to the wood and it begins to burn. And yes, it smokes and you can take your time and get used to it. Shading, you can do little designs. And it just takes time. If you push hard, it doesn't make a darker line. It just bends this little fragile end over. So don't push super hard. You want to just go gently and slowly to get a nice burn. So that's how you use the wood burner. Practice and enjoy coming up with a creative design for your pencil holder. Once you have the holes drilled and you've got a little design done, this is pretty basic. Take your time, do something really fun. It's time to glue them together. Now, a lot of people can make a mistake here because they end up with way too much glue. You're going to glue the top part to the bottom part, and my bottom part is over there. I'm going to go get it. So we want them to be like this. When they're done, you can choose how you want to orient it and where you want it. This direction doesn't really matter. And you're going to glue it on like this. So when you're gluing it, be careful not to put too much glue on. The glue is back here on this shelf. You're going to take the glue and take a note. There should be a small angle on the end. That's important because you want to have that down on your wood, not rolled over like this, so you have the whole hole where a whole bunch will come out. You want it on its side, and just gently squeeze and drag that along so you get a very small bead, so that when it's not going to squeeze out everywhere. Stick them together, rub them around a little bit, and then you let it sit for about 20 minutes, half an hour. One thing you want to watch out for is if you do get a little bit of glue squeezing out, you're going to want to wipe that up. Get a damp paper towel and try to get in there to wipe that up. It looks much cleaner if there's no glue squeezed out. Now let it sit for the required time, and then you're done.